Testing, testing. It's like Splinter Cell. I hope that's still a recognizable name as a video game. Splinter Cell. Game of my childhood. Arguably the greatest video game ever created. I'm just going to do a sound check because it's a little late and I don't want to be too loud. So I'm just going to check if I can hear. Oh, I can hear me just fine. What if I'm whispering like this? Oh, it's perfect. It's a great mic. It's a great mic. I have to tell myself that. And we are alive. No cold openings here. No cold openings. Okay. We're alive and we're alive and we're on the balcony again. Primarily because um, obviously the daily lives are important and I had made the thumbnail and everything and I was ready to go. But I was on my uh, third research paper reading of the day and my brain just closed. My brain just stopped working. I'm like, what the hell is going on? So I sat there for probably another hour trying to, read more or type more. I'm like, let me do this thing. Let me take a little walk. Let me get some fresh air. Let me wash my face. Let me do something. Nothing worked. So, it was not the best. And so I'm like, I'll do the live later. And by that point, I had completely forgotten that I needed to do the live. And at least, and I'll be honest, up until about 5 minutes before starting this, um, I had completely forgotten about the live. And I looked at the time and I'm like, something's missing today. I did not, I'm missing something today. And I'm like, I didn't go live. It's like, okay. So I got my milk and I'm feeling good. All right, we're ready to go live. Fortunately, I'd already created the thumbnail, so we're still keeping up with what we got going on. All right, we're not skipping any days. All right, we're not skipping any days. How you doing? Who's here? Hello. Okay, let's get into it. I want to talk about something important, and I got that from those damn research papers I was reading. I'm like, how do I get an edge, right? I've been talking about insight. I've been talking about creating things. I've been talking about all sorts of interesting things, right? Giving really good ideas. And I'm like, okay, as part of that process, you have to be able to look where other people are not looking, right? You have to read things that other people haven't put together yet, right? There's an infinite amount of information out there. And the only things that, are kind of packaged ideas are the ones that have already been put together. But if there's an infinite amount of information out there, that means there's an infinite amount of ways to package it, right? Only issue is that is called creating, right? When you package information into something that can be considered useful for a group of people, your audience, your niche, that is incredibly difficult, right? Because you need, first and foremost, you need to know what people want, right? And to okay, let's say you're trying to sell to a CEO. Let's say you're trying to sell to companies, right? You have an idea. What on earth do you need, or how will you even possibly know what on earth they would want, right? Imagine a busy person runs a company, small to medium. Their worth is about 1 to 10 million, in that range. They have a product they're selling, and you're selling them a service or something like that, right? What on earth can you create that will have value for them? Firstly, first and foremost, you have to know who you're talking to, right? It's important. They teach it in business school. They taught it in school when you're doing writing, creative writing. Who are you writing for? What are you doing this for? Right? They're trying to teach you the value of what on earth you're doing. Why are you doing it in the first place? That's important, right? And once you figured that out, and you know that person inside out, you know what they like for coffee. You know when they have 10 minutes, what do they open their phone to, right? You know where their attention is, and therefore, you know what on earth they want, right? I realized it goes a little bit deeper than that, right? It's not just knowing about who you're talking to, but basically, you have to become an expert of whatever industry they're in, right? And that is that's that's the crazy thing that people don't realize, right? You see all these things about like, oh, I'm gonna become a millionaire when I'm 18, 14 year olds on TikTok and YouTube and Instagram talking about how they're gonna really make it. That's the part they don't get. That's the part that most adults don't get. Most businessmen don't get. It's like if you want someone to listen to you, you have to be an expert at the field because they're in the field, right? It's like riding a bike, right? You can learn to ride a bike the normal way, right? But what information can you give to a professional BMX rider, right? Someone who does that professionally. That's the difference, right? Imagine you ride a bicycle. You know how to ride a bicycle. You've ridden all your life, right? And you try to teach a BMX rider, a professional motorsport person, right? What are you going to teach them? You're like, well, to balance it, I usually, steer it like, no. They're not going to listen. They don't care. They're not beginners, and you're not going to get their attention that way. You don't have to become a professional BMX rider, but you have to start riding the bike. You have to know how it feels to be a certain height in the air, and what a trick feels like. When you get to that level of information, when you know as much as they do, that's when you start seeing beyond the horizon. That's where original ideas come from. You have to be able to walk in the landscape. You have to touch grass with your feet to know how a cow feels. Or, maybe that's a bad example, but chug a milk. A lot of calcium opens up the pineal gland, whatever. I read it on the internet, right? And the thing about that is like if you've ever watched a movie where it's like a movie about a genius or someone trying to create something like The Social Network, that movie, or the Blackberry movie, or any sort of biopic about someone who did something awesome. There's this moment in their process of getting there, right? In their journey, where it's like they're just looking at paper, they're just looking at a screen, they're reading, and that might take about 30 seconds to a minute and a half, 2 minutes in the movie, but that's the main part, right? Everything else is irrelevant. That 30 seconds to 2 minutes in the movie, that's the most important part of that process, right? And you see these. I found it funny. You see these guys, like people on social media who are like pretending to be in edits, and it's like, I get it, right? Films have made us lazy to the idea of what that process actually is, because when we imagine it, because first of all, it's like really difficult to do, so not many people do it. It's the road less traveled. The only kind of perception people have of that is when you watch a movie, right? And that section in it, even in Rocky, right? It's like you put on a song and you work out for like 3 minutes, but no, that training period was months. That was a long period of time. And so it doesn't occur to you just how lonely, just how crushing it can be, right? And I got that from my work today, right? I got that from today because I realized that the way it works is that you just have to do it, right? You have to become an expert. That's the only way. Otherwise, you're not doing it right. And if you get lucky, bravo, but that's just not the way to do it. It's like you can do anything. You can do anything. And for some people, it may be harder than others. That's a given. But if you can break something into a process, consider it a mental game, right? Mentally speaking. If you're at basic, if you're the average person, you can basically do anything. It's just really hard, right? There's like a 0.0001% chance that you can do it, but it is possible, right? And the fact that it could happen by luck, right? And this is my personal belief. The fact that it could happen by luck means that there is a process to it, right? Like if you're, this is, I'll tell a story. I used to do a lot of like card tricks. Like I used to be like really into magic tricks, like specifically with cards. So I'd be shuffling, like my early teenage years was just spent like shuffling cards and doing magic tricks at school. Like I would annoy my family, and I'd be that guy who always has a deck of cards at school and tries to show magic tricks. Um, it wasn't the most. Yeah, that was just my thing, you know. Like I didn't get bullied for it, but you know, it's just like, oh, there he is again with his cards. Anyways, like I used to always have a deck of cards in my hands, and I became such an expert at just holding a deck of card, right? It's such a niche skill, but I became such an expert at holding a deck of cards in my hands all the time that I knew the weight of it. I knew what 52 cards felt like in my hand because I had them all the time. And it's like I would pick up the deck of cards and I'd know that some were missing because the weight of it would be different. The size of it was just slightly off, but I could tell that one or two cards were missing, and I could tell more than one was missing by the weight as well. So when a kid tried to show me a magic trick, because he was interested in it too, he handed me a deck of cards and asked me to shuffle it, and I'm like, "You're missing cards," and I ruined his trick because the trick needed him to give me an incomplete deck of cards, and he'd put the deck behind his back, and then he'd add the missing cards, which were organized for the trick. Okay, and that's it, right? That's the thing. That's the secret. I had held on to those cards so much that I knew exactly how they felt, and so I had insight that no one else did. Right? Obviously, it's not a very interesting thing to be a professional at, right? I knew exactly. I could tell if there were cards missing from a deck of card just by the weight of it, right? And that's the secret. If you can embed yourself in something so much that it becomes almost superhuman to know the things that you do know, suddenly it's valuable. Because that kid was shocked. He's like, "How'd you know?" Right? "How'd you know there were cards missing? That's ridiculous." Right? So I had that kind of silly advantage over him in that magic trick. And then you consider everything else, right? It's like, does luck even exist? If something is possible through events that seems chaotic, there is a process that you can break down to remove luck and achieve it, right? It's similar with like roulette tables, right? I read this on Reddit or something. Some guy was talking about how he used to work at a casino, and every time he'd spin, um, he'd kind of feel the spin, and he'd feel the speed of the wheel, and he'd gotten used to the weight of the ball, and he'd gotten so used to it that he knew that if he threw the ball and spun it with a certain amount of weight, he could kind of mostly, like over 50%, if he aimed for a certain number, he'd get it, right? And the thing is, it feels superhuman to think about something like that, where it's like such an unfair advantage in something. But it is possible by just doing. The human body just has an ability to embed itself in something to the point where becomes instinctive about certain things. And that's the trick to creating new things, right? When you go into an industry, when you go into an idea, if you can embed yourself like there's nothing else, basically like a form of psychosis, if you can become an expert, just constantly like holding a deck of cards in your hands, you'll feel when a card is missing. And that kind of insight is incredibly valuable as long as what you're practicing is not holding a deck of cards. I mean, maybe that skill is incredibly valuable to card companies that are trying to keep all 52, cards, in their deck. But consider anything else. Consider anything else. If you can become an expert in that field, you'll be able to feel things almost instinctively. And the issue with that is, and this is the point of the live, right? The issue with that is that it is incredibly difficult. Holding a deck of cards is not very taxing mentally to your life, to your time. It's kind of just like holding a fidget toy, really, you know? But to engulf yourself in an idea is far more different. If you're Because it's so mentally taxing to think of the same thing, right? In your hand, it's different, right? You can kind of forget it. And even while you're forgetting about it, your hand's still at work, so you still feel the weight, right, of the deck of cards. This is a very extended metaphor. But with an idea, right, you can't just look at it. You can't just hold it, right? Although sometimes that can happen, I've had it happen to me where I learned how to ride a bike, and I wasn't very good at it, and I was always afraid of riding one because I wasn't comfortable with my ability to balance on it. And it always seemed so strange to me that you could balance on two such small portions of leather and just move forward, right? But then one day, it just clicked because I'd be thinking about it so much. Because, well, obviously not in a short period at a time, like over the course of like, embarrassingly, when I was like early 20s, like 21, 22, finally I just knew how to ride a bike. I'd ridden it periodically, and slowly that feeling of being on a bike and kind of riding in a certain way and learning about it and just thinking about it, unintentionally, not like I was trying to learn without riding a bike, but just having that feeling of actually being on a bike, even though, for a long time afterwards, I wasn't very comfortable. Eventually, without like after having a long hiatus from riding a bike, I'm just like, I think I could ride a bike now. And so I went on a bike and I could ride a bike. So, these things are strange. The thing about ideas is they go out of fashion really fast in this day and age. Ideas go out of fashion really fast. And I've had this happen to me where I've thought up ideas. I'm like, oh, it would be really cool and useful if someone did this, and then someone does it, and they make a lot of money. Or like a type of an idea I might have about a certain type of business. Not all of them came true, but you know, here's hoping. You know, I mean, there's plenty of good ideas out there. They're just waiting to be executed on, right? The first guy who does it, which means that this kind of stuff, this kind of process requires speed, right? And that means that you have to stay in the pocket. You have to stay in the zone. And there's no other way to do it. There's no secret. There's no kind of cheat code. You just stay in the pocket. You just have to understand that the only way you're really going to understand why something works the way it does and how you can build upon that with superhuman ability is to just do it. And it is so hard because you spend, like, first of all, you like, if you're not like if you don't have the most ability to focus, this is very difficult. I read a bunch of research papers today and my brain just went numb, right? And I was like, I was trying to get to the bottom of what I was trying to find out, right? And it just wasn't working. This just wasn't working. Like, I gotta read more, and nothing was working. So I had to take a break. And because of that, I missed the live nearly. And you know, um, after that, I was pretty much out of commission for the rest of the day. And creating things is just difficult. The only way ideas execute is just spending an insane amount of time on it until you develop a superhuman ability to just know, right? It's like when you look at movies about stock markets and they have all these numbers, right? And it's like, what the hell does that mean? But someone who spent 20, 30 years staring at those numbers every day, it's like they see patterns. They're like, that number's going down. So what does that say for all the 30 other numbers that are on my screen? You know? It's like that movie Margin Call. Dude was a rocket scientist and he was able to figure out something that was wrong in the math. The math didn't add up. And he figured it out. He had been to a place with numbers where others hadn't, and he was able to see more than them. And so, when it comes to, holding a deck of cards or learning how to ride a bicycle or seeing Wall Street, whatever, a Bloomberg terminal, seeing stock prices and graphs, or, you know, trying to teach a BMX rider something, you just have to know more. You have to be in the pocket more. Someone has to spend, like, and this is why it's valuable, right? Someone may have a company. Someone may have a company. And they might be making money. They do not have 24 hours in a day. They have to sleep. So once their workday finishes and they've done all the things they need to, tomorrow they have to wake up again and do more things, plus things they couldn't do yesterday because of time. And so people don't have time for this. This is where this is why you have an edge in knowing more than the person who's doing it, right? A BMX rider is going to spend most of his time riding a bicycle or BMX bike because that's his job. That's what he has to do. He has to go to competitions. He has to go to press conferences if they have it. I don't know how big BMX riding is. I don't know why I use that example. I know nothing about BMX bikes. But a BMX bike guy, I don't know what they're called, athlete. Um, if he goes into like he can't spend all day studying the bike and kind of tinkering with the nuts and bolts and measuring the weights of each piece and seeing how weight distribution affects. Of course he could, right? Right? But there's not enough time in the day. That's why you have coaches, right? You have to spend the time training, and someone else has to find your edge, right? This is why you have coaches. Like, this is why boxers, they don't have the time to learn about exercise science and all that. They may learn a little bit, but they've got to train. They've got to do all sorts of things, and to avoid them getting stressed after 3 hours, 5 hours of working out a day, they've got to rest. And they can't just be, looking at books and studying and watching videos about anatomy. They can't do that. They have to go into a cryo chamber. They have to do cold showers. They have to go into a sauna. They need to sleep. They need to sleep a lot. They need to rest. You know, they have to do press conferences. They have to go running. They have to do this after they've done all their training. They have to do more running. They have to do more training. Right? So a person who's in it may have a place in the market. They may have a place on the stage, but they do not have the time to hold that deck of cards longer than anyone else. As a child, I had that time. I probably lost that ability now, right? And that is because I was not staying in the pocket. I'm no longer in that pocket. And I tried testing it again a few years ago, but I don't have that ability anymore. Or at least, I could probably train it back because I've been there already. But that's the point. To be able to know more than others, you just have to keep looking. Never take your eye off the ball. And that is incredibly difficult because no one else will do it. It's mentally taxing. Your brain will feel numb. You'll want to quit. It's okay. This is the way to do it. There's no other way, right? So might as well just do the thing because there's no other way. And because there's so much on your mind that you need to be able to stay in the pocket, you're not going to have much time for anything else. How you doing, man? Welcome to the live. Got any questions? Do you like milk? Hi. I mean, I'm coming off the live anyway, but good to meet you. Well, this was fun. I hope you found this educational. Stay in the pocket, stay in the end zone, stay on the fringes. That's the only way it's done. Okay? This was real. Be good, do good things, and subscribe, and good things will happen. And I'll see you tomorrow.